So we're all muted. I'll have to do this again. I'd like to ask our secretary, Rhonda Ginsburg, do we have a quorum?
Yes, we have a quorum.
Okay, thank you very much. And for the record, and that we do have a quorum, I'd like to begin the meeting, and I will turn this over to Larry Ginsburg, who is our acting nominating chair and has done an excellent job in putting together the team today. And Larry, thank you. And why don't you go ahead and start?
Okay, my pleasure. As acting chair of the nominating committee, I have two announcements to make before we do the elections. One is there is a legal parliamentary doctrine called force majeure, and I'm invoking it based on the COVID pandemic and the fact that we're on Zoom as opposed to present. Now, what I wish to direct is that all officers, directors, and prospective directors who have not become members or have not renewed their membership, you have, under my direction, until the next board meeting, April 6th at 7:30, to resubmit your membership or rejoin if you haven't. My second message is you will see from the nominating committee that we will be nominating people for 1, 2, and 3-year terms. Our bylaws require that 1/3 of the board be up for election each year. And so this is the best way to get in order, so we don't lose board continuity every 3 years. Therefore, as acting chairperson of the nominating committee, I wish to place the following slate into nomination. As president for a 3-year term, Peter Lilienthal. As executive vice president for a 2-year term, Ava Weller. As secretary for a 3-year term, Rhonda Jacobs Ginsburg. As treasurer for a 3-year term, Walter Morgenthaler. And now for the directors. As director for a 1-year term, Gloria Tanofsky. As directors for 2-year terms, Wendy Bennett, Jeff Kahn, Fred Golliv, Abram Heisler, Jill Kaplan, Nancy Kattay, Kim Krieger, Elizabeth Rubin, Barbara White. And now, as directors for a 3-year term, Seema Broza, Leslie Hyacin, and Deborah Zuckerman. I move the nominations be entered. Is there a second?
I second.
Second.
Thank you. Now, are there any nominations from the floor? Hearing none, I will call the election to order. All in favor of the slate as proposed, please signify by raising your hand. And remember that each unit is only entitled to 1 vote. So if I vote for Rhonda and I, she cannot. All those opposed, please raise your hand. Seeing none, I declare the election concluded and the slate of officers as nominated elected to be officers and directors of the Jewish Historical Society of Fairfield County. Now, it is the function of every committee that is not a standing committee to make itself redundant. Therefore, since the election has been completed, I declare that the nominations committee for the 2021/2022 calendar year of the Historical Society is now discharged. A new nominating committee will be installed or instituted by the president on or around November of this year for the year 2022/2023. I want to thank the members of my committee. Now that the elections have been completed, I will change my hat and become the installing officer. Okay, now, as installing officer, my first function is bittersweet, and that is to deinstall the 7 people who are leaving the board. They are Lester Freundlich, Sandy Golub, Marcy Schoenfeld, Judy Liebenskind, Leah Tillman, Gail G. Trell, and Shelley Wellfeld. They have all completed their terms, and I wish them well. Now, this is a bittersweet moment for me and for the board of directors. If you are an aficionado of the movie Bull Durham, you will remember the scene when the manager is releasing Crash Davis and saying it is one of the hardest things that a manager must do to let people go. Now, these people who are, quote, being deinstalled / disinstalled have given us their time, their expertise, their values, their intelligence for either 3 or 6 years, and they will be missed. But I am glad to inform the board and the membership that we will not let these people go quietly into that good night. They will be called upon to provide their expertise in their leadership and have agreed to stay involved with our society and the Jewish Historical Society of Fairfield County in a number of positions, committees, etc. So though I say farewell and thank you for your time on the board, we will not let you go. Now, the next duty will be to install the next board of directors. Before I do this, and I have to muse a little on the history of the organization. I have spent over half of my life since the Stamford Jewish Historical Society was formed in 1983/1984 as an officer, a director, and a member of that organization. In fact, I was one of the original 7, the Magnificent 7 members who started the organization. I was an incorporator. I was the premier second vice president, as well as the premier general counsel of the organization. And now it is my pleasure to welcome and install our next board. First of all, I will install the officers. President, Peter Lilienthal. Executive Vice President, Ava Weller. Secretary, Rhonda Jacobs Ginsburg. Treasurer, Walter Morgenthaler. You are being reinstalled. Thank you for the fine job you have done for this organization and for the future fine job you will do for this organization. Next, I will install the directors who were elected or re-elected for post this term. They are Gloria Chinovsky, Wendy Bennett, Jeff Kahn, Fred Golub, Abram Heisler, Jill Kaplan, Nancy Kittay, Kim Krieger, Elizabeth Rubin, Barbara White, Seema Brosa, Leslie Hyacinth, and Deborah Zuckerman. Thank you for your commitment and your interest in our organization. And now, by the power vested in me by the Board of Directors, I wish to appoint 2 young students from our local Jewish high school for a term of 2 years to the Board of Directors. Please welcome Lily Kleinman and Avi Wiederhorn. We have just halved the age average of the board. So thank you very much. And please, cheers are in order.
Woohoo!
I now have concluded the election and installation process of the officers and directors to the Jewish Historical Society of Fairfield County. I will now return the meeting over to the once and present and future president, Peter Lilienthal. Thank you very much.
Larry, that's an excellent job. I thought that there were so many nominations and so forth that you gave and did an excellent job. And I just wanted to screen share a table, and I will get it up and screen share now and just quickly show it to everybody that they can see what a wonderful job you did. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay, well, I'm glad. You're all muted, so I'm asking and I can't hear anybody. That's interesting. So this is the entire nominating process that Larry just went through, and you can see the extent of it all. And we certainly welcome new board members, and I look forward very much in working with you. And sadly, we have some of the board members that are retiring, and over here on the right screen are the retiring board members. I think that you'd all, if you look at them, you could see how productive they've been over these last few years, and I will miss them. But I did speak to every one of them and said, you can't leave us right away. We need your help. And we're going to ask that you stay on in many of your functions. And many of you know how active they have all been, and I thank them all. And Larry, again, I want to thank you. Excellent job. So we're going to now get on with our meeting. And the first additional next item on the agenda, I am going to ask for Gail G. Trell to bring us the work that she has been working on, along with others on her entire team, and show us something about what she's been up to with Remembering the Family Store.
Thank you, Peter. And Larry, you did an excellent job. One of the best installations I've ever seen. My story begins by talking about 4 or 5 years ago, Lester Charlack of blessed memory was asked a question about a family's business in downtown Stamford. So he started to research it, and before it was just one family business, it ended up being many, many more. And he collected photographs of many of the stores circa 1940, 1965. And he got the photographs from our very own Vivian and Irwin Miller archives. He went to the Stamford History Center that used to be the Stamford Historical Society, and also the City of Stamford's Urban Redevelopment Commission. So all these pictures he collected, and he decided to do a slideshow presentation that he took to many organizations around town. And they were received wonderfully, with people being taken down memory lane, and they loved it. So a committee got together and decided to make it into a documentary. So we applied for a grant from the City of Stamford Community Arts Partnership Program and received a grant. That began our work. We decided to find a filmmaker who could put the story together of what it was like to have a family business that was eventually going to be taken down by the Urban Redevelopment Commission. So what I'm going to do now is introduce you to our very own Connecticut Red Hot Mama film director, award-winning film director, Marge Costa, who is from Aries Production. And Marge will tell you and get to show you a little bit of Remembering the Family Store.
Thank you very much, Gail, and hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm just so excited that we are finally moving out of COVID, and this film is finally going to be released. One good thing about having a little extra time and being like stuck inside the house, I was able to just hunt around for more photos, which I found. We ended up adding some additional interviews to the piece. So it's pretty much done right now, and just excited that we're at this point in time. What I'm going to show you today is a very short sizzle reel from the actual film. The actual film runs about an hour and 15 minutes, but I pulled some clips from the film and put them together in this reel just to give you kind of an idea of how the film is going to look and is going to feel. So I hope you enjoy that. Please, when you watch it, just really listen. The music is very impactful. Each section has a different piece of music, and it really just enhances the film. So I hope you enjoy it, and I look forward to seeing you all when we finally get to show this at the Avon Theater. So take it away.
Home to some of the largest corporations in the world and a major magnet for regional employment, Stamford has become one of the most important cities in America and one of the most livable communities in Connecticut. Its reputation as the city that works has been well earned. But before Stamford's urban redevelopment program transformed the city into the corporate offices and high-rise buildings that we see in Stamford today, Stamford's downtown was a bustling metropolis of independently owned family stores. From old Main Street to a Pacific Street that no longer exists. From Atlantic Street to Bedford. From Bank Street to Broad. And from Lower Summer to a Washington Boulevard that used to be called South Street, these streets were the commercial nucleus of the downtown.
During the Eastern European immigration, most of the Jews coming from Eastern Europe lived in that Pacific Street area. It was Wall Street, Pacific Street, Brook Street, Stage Street, St. John's Place. It was all close to their businesses and close to the synagogue.
It grew from a small men's clothing store to really like a department store that became known as the finest men's clothing store in Stamford.
It was a family business, because even people that worked for Brock Press, they worked for Brock Press for many, many years.
The more fun store was Krebs.
We were at the Krebs store more than, the Krebs really never came to my father's store because all of the action was over at the Krebs store.
Unforgettable to Stamfordites of a certain age were Stamford's many popular movie theaters. Most of them were converted vaudeville houses and became movie theaters when talkies came into vogue. In the early 1960s, most of the stores in downtown Stamford were targeted for demolition by a municipal agency called the Stamford Urban Redevelopment Corporation.
That we won in the court because they said that it was blighted area. And they figured out, my lawyer, he put it in, it's not a blighted area, so that's how they lost.
So I said, I will lay down and die there. I'm not living with $230,000.
No buildings were officially demolished until June 30th, 1965, when the residence of 24 Willow Street was torn down.
And my gut feeling is when people ask me, what do you think of the downtown today? And I say, well, I don't like it, but it's a very vibrant city. And it's, it's a little Manhattan now.
I just knew exactly who and what my grandpa was and what it was like to have a family store.
So that's just a little preview of what the film's going to be like. Again, it's an hour and 15 minutes. And I'm going to turn it back over to Gail to wrap up this sequence.
So I'm really, really pleased that we found Marge. She was amazing. We love working with her, and she has made our dream and Lester's dream come true beyond our expectations. And as you can see at the end, we have dedicated the film to Lester Charlack of blessed memory. We are going to have a premiere on Sunday, June 12th at the Avon Theater. It will be a special invitation-only event, so that after the premiere has been shown, it will be open to the community and will be shown at the Avon, where you can buy your tickets and get to see the full production. It's a dream come true. So I'm going to put in the chat, if you have any curiosity to see the original trailer that we have had, which will be shown at the Avon, and you can look at our website and find the trailer. So I hope you enjoy it. I look forward to it. I think it's going to be a great success, and thank you, Marge, for all your work. And the committee that I worked with. They were amazing, and some of them are on this Zoom today. Thank you.
Can't wait, Gail. It was terrific, just great. And thank you, Marge, for sharing that. And I would now like to turn this over to Elisa Kaplan and her La Door Vador presentation. And I think you'll all love it. So Elisa, take it away.
Thank you, Peter. My name is Elisa Kaplan, and along with Leah Tillman, Rhonda Ginsburg, and Leslie Hyacin, I am proud and delighted to be part of the JHSFC La Door Vador Intergenerational Oral History team. We initiated this project about a year ago at our local Stamford Day School, and we have expanded it to 2 synagogues.
Well, Elisa, hold it, Lisa, 1 second. I guess I see you because of where you are. Is there a way to get Elisa front and center?
That's okay. I like looking like Gail. I'm flattered.
So there you go. That's great.
There I go. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we initiated this project about a year ago at our local Stamford Day School, and we've expanded it to 2 synagogue religious schools this year. And what is this project? We get students to interview their grandparents and produce videos. So let's take a look at what it is that we actually do. The La Door Vador Project, Discovering My Jewish History in Fairfield County. So here we are at Bicultural Hebrew Academy of Connecticut early in the morning. You can see students, teachers, and La Door Vador facilitators hard at work. You can see that students are sitting in circles. They're talking to each other. How else are we going to get them to marry each other? Anyway, we believe in experiential, student-centered learning activities, and we have a lot of fun too. Show me the numbers. In this past year, we have had 3 locations. We were in Norwalk at Congregation Bethel in the fall, at Temple Shalom, and at Bicultural Hebrew Academy in February and March. How many students did we actually interact with? Well, in Norwalk, we had 6 students. In that class, we had 5th and 6th graders. In Temple Shalom, we had 13 students who are 7th graders. And at Bicultural Hebrew Academy of Connecticut, we have 33 8th grade students. So we're targeting middle school students. Now, if you look at that number, you think, oh, well, but that number is really much bigger because each of those students have at least 1 or 2 parents, and 1 or 2 grandparents were involved in the project too. So what looks like about 50 students actually involves about 150 people. The teachers in Norwalk, Rhonda Ginsburg was the teacher of that class at Temple Shalom. The assistant rabbi, Rabbi Kevin Peters, is the teacher. And at Bicultural Hebrew Academy, Ashley Treat and Chloe Klaus are the teachers, and the principals at each of those schools, Danielle Middleman, David Cohen, and David Giver. Our target is 5 sessions in religious schools and 6 sessions in the day school. So what a team we have. On the woman in the red shirt is Rhonda Ginsburg, and notice that she's doing an activity with students in a line and getting them to participate and have fun at the same time. And in the middle slides, we have Lily and Avi, are two of our newest board members, and they are students at the high school and were able to come over to our bicultural class. Oh, well, they got to miss a little bit of their own class to help us teach that day. Below that, you see Leah Tillman. Leah brings the archives to the school, and what she has in her hand is a little thing that you hit the knee with that she's just taken out of a doctor's bag. By the way, none of our students could guess what that bag was. They've never seen a doctor visit their home with a doctor's bag. Anyway, that's Dr. DeMoyton from Stanford. That's his bag, circa 1950. Next to that, you see Leslie, another new board member, one of our newest board members. And what is she doing there with the students? Well, she is teaching them how to interview. She demonstrates, she role plays, she watches them, gives them advice, and they know how to do it when they're done. And then finally, there I am. Somebody has to take notes. It all comes together at a final siyum, a final ceremony. And note the parents. And even though they're all masked, they're kfelling and they're smiling. They brought other members of their family, and we had students from the religious school there as well. And we watched all the student videos that day and gave the students certificates and some extra fun goodies as well. Below, you see that the students at Temple Shalom are giving us a thumbs up. In the middle, you see the students at Bicultural looking at documents and photos and finding out their stories, discovering what Stamford history is all by themselves. And on the far right, you see that we use low tech sometimes as well as high tech, as we had kids write on a whiteboard. It is a win-win situation. We already have 3 schools scheduled for next year because we want to discover the Jewish history of Fairfield County, and we want students and their elder relatives to find out each other's stories, because the Jewish Historical Society of Fairfield County is all about telling the story. So if you'd like to help us, we need facilitators, we need tech support, and we need supplies. And how about moral support? So if you think this is a good idea and you want to give us some moral support, let me see some thumbs up. Okay, got a few. Thank you. And this project is the newest and most exciting thing from the Jewish Historical Society of Fairfield County. Thank you.
So Alyssa, Gail, the 2 of you have just done a phenomenal job and so represent in many ways what we at the Jewish Historical Society are about. And you mentioned it at the end, it's about telling the story and digging into our archives and bringing them forward and so on. One of which, of course, is oral histories, which we now have about 250 oral histories in our archives, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And Gail, a terrific job in really getting at the roots of Stamford and where we come from. So let me just say this. This is such a pivotal point in our Jewish Historical Society of the way we are doing things. And I'd like to present a couple of awards. First of all, I have the Birkat Hamat Home Award, which is blessing of the place. And that place, guess is where? Here in Stamford, Connecticut. And it's being given to Gail G. Trell and her team. Today, March the 27th, 2022. Terrific job, Gail, and this is to be in your home and displayed to your whole team. And for the Lador Vador group, you each are getting a yad. It's engraved at the bottom, and the yad is representing a symbol of pointing away in the intergenerational oral history story. And what better way to do teaching about history and where things come from, but from the families themselves. And what this says is Lador Vador, the yad, pointing to the future. And congratulations, and thank you all very much for a phenomenal piece of work that's really centerpiece to what we do, and thank you very much. Next on our agenda is a story. It's a story about two people. Elisa and David are in their 15th home. No matter where they lived, they have had an enormous impact on their community. Thank goodness we are one of them. Elisa has dedicated her life to Jewish education. As early as high school, she taught kids Hebrew and Judaic studies in her Valdosta, Georgia Synagogue Religious School, and went on to teach in Colorado, Maryland, New Jersey, Germany, where she taught in all streams of Judaism. She holds many degrees. She's got a BA in German language and literature at Valdosta State College. She has a master's in comparative literature at University of Colorado. She has a master's in education at the University of North Carolina. And guess what? She has a doctorate in educational leadership from George Washington University. A significant project in her early career was Havarim Ba'Telephone, in which older adults and some without children at home signed up to mentor students in Hebrew by coaching and listening over the phone, benefiting both students and adults. The project was included in a published book of educational resources for family education. Connection with Lador Vador. Through her leadership as the 11th president of JHSFC, here's a short list of what she has accomplished. I know many of you could easily double that list. Membership during her administration grew at 5 to 10% a year. She grew the outreach to wider Fairfield County and engaged with 19 other historical societies. This included our activities throughout Fairfield County with programs and book tours hosted at the area libraries. She broadened the board of directors by recruiting from all over Fairfield County. Our oral history interviews have doubled to over 250 in our archives. A significant expansion of the signature project was our work with the Congregation for Humanistic Judaism in Westport that Alyssa spearheaded. CHJ, under our mentorship, produced 33 oral histories, narrated and interviewed by their members. And how about the archives itself? We secured a grant to begin transformation of the archives from paper files to digital portal. The archives grew from its origins under Irwin Miller to become the hub of JHSFC's activity, thanks to Leah Tillman, who has played a major role in making this transition possible. Secured a grant for the Innovative Art Project show at night in downtown Stamford, Remembering Pacific Street, which Gail spoke about. And then it was followed up by a second grant from the city of Stamford to produce the Remembering the Family Store documentary clip, which she had just shown. The quality of programming under Elisa's leadership was superb in lectures, book talks, and events. A small sampling includes Terry Lowenthal's explaining the issues around the 2020 census, Israeli music with Gil Harel, and the Mishigas of Yiddish theater with Jeff Kaplan. Then there was the Norma and Milton Mann lecture series, first named lecture under Ava Weller's initiative. With approximately 5 to 6 programs a year, over 50 have been presented during her presidency under the leadership of Marcy Schoenfeld. Then there's a Bissl Yiddish, led by Judy Libeskin and featuring Judy Altman, bringing our Mama Losh, our mother tongue, back to life. I know that Lisa considers one of the other significant achievements during her tenure was by honoring Judy Altman and Agnes Verdes at the 2019 Heritage Award celebration. At last year's annual meeting, Arnold Yellen and Larry Ginsberg gave a wonderful tribute to our third president, George J. Goldberg, for which the George J. Goldberg Award is given to an outstanding JHFC member. This year, it's my pleasure to present the 2022 George J. Goldberg Award to the so deserving leader and mentor, Elisa A. Kaplan. Oh my goodness, what do you have there, Elisa? What's in that bag?
I'm so humbled and so honored for your beautiful words. And I know that things are only going to get better and stronger and more beautiful under your leadership, Peter. Oh, wow. This is kind of funny. This is so beautiful. It says, I can't read it backwards, the George J. Goldberg Award, Elisa A. Kaplan, for outstanding service and leadership to the Jewish Historical Society of Fairfield County. And I'm delighted that it's a clock. And Peter, David has never managed this, but maybe you can get me places on time.
Well, you know, that's always a big trick, right? It's always a big trick. So in any event, we all know what a difficult time it's been these past couple of years. And Elisa, congratulations, very well deserved. And the way you motivate us all and have led us this way has just been spectacular. And I don't think there's anyone that wouldn't give you the highest praise who's been with us. And I'm so glad that you're going to continue doing stuff, right? Okay. But we all know our ability to overcome the challenges over these more than 2 years. It wouldn't have been possible without David M. Kaplan. We are awarding him the JHSFC Outstanding Service Award for providing technology and management skills to the Jewish Historical Society of Fairfield County. And David, here is the award for you. And thank you for all the things that you do. The work behind the scenes would not be happening without David Kaplan and his lovely bride. And the fact that we're the 15th place that you've lived is a gift to us. And thank you very much. And so that is our program for today. And in terms of the annual meeting, and I so look forward to being your president. And I'm clearly going to need a lot of help. I need to, in fact, do the kind of things that Elisa has done over these years. We have a wonderful team, and I'm going to lean on you guys. So don't be surprised if I lean a lot harder than you think. So with that, we have a wonderful program coming up right now. It's a special program from the Connecticut Women's Hall of Fame, and it is led by Liz Krebs, who is a delightful person. And Liz, thank you so much, and take it away.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me to share our stories about our wonderful Connecticut women to all of you during your annual meeting. So I'm just going to share my screen. So thank you again. As Peter had just mentioned, my name is Liz Krebs, and I am the Education Manager at the Connecticut Women's Hall of Fame. I want to thank you all for coming. And again, it's been a pleasure to sit in on your board meeting, your annual meeting, and learn about all the remarkable programs that you offer to our community. It's very, very impressive. So we are actually towards the end of March, and March is Women's History Month, so it's no better time to be able to share our women's stories, our Connecticut women's stories, with all of you today. For 28 years, the Connecticut Women's Hall of Fame has been dispelling cultural myths and misguided notions about women's abilities. Our mission is to honor the achievements of women by celebrating their legacies and telling their powerful stories, inspiring women and girls to realize their own limitless potential. We do this in a number of ways. We host an annual induction ceremony every year, where we first tell the stories of our new class of inductees. Their stories, along with those of our existing 136 inductees, then form the basis of our ongoing educational programming, which inspires over 65,000 people each year. Our induction ceremony for 2022 is titled Women in Sports. It will be held at the Connecticut Convention Center on October 20th, 2022, and tickets will be available soon. We are also proud to share the stories of our inductees in different ways. We provide traveling exhibits for display in the community, specifically our brand new exhibit, our newest exhibit, Rise Up Sisters, which chronicles the contributions of Connecticut women to the women's suffrage movement. We offer free curricular resources. For schools, from lessons about amazing Connecticut women in STEM to materials of many Connecticut women's firsts throughout the 19th, 20th, and 21st centuries. We also visit students directly in elementary, middle, and high school classrooms around the state. And we offer webinars, which is called A Conversation Between, and it's really simple. It's just a gathering of women talking about today's issues. And we give programs, which today you're going to hear, which is called our Talks on the Road series. And this is given to the public, to organizations like yours, to libraries, to school PTAs, to adults in any small groups. Today, however, we have the opportunity to focus on the rich contributions of some of Connecticut's remarkable Jewish women whose work has had lasting impact on our society. Across multiple fields, these women have had a hand in many of the most significant events and changes in Connecticut history. Their accomplishments are as varied as their struggles, and their stories inspire us to create new history. Some are names we know well, while others are too often overlooked treasures waiting to be rediscovered and remembered for their important work. All are extraordinary, and I hope you'll enjoy meeting some of Connecticut's remarkable women. As we'll see, their paths were not always smooth, as many of them faced a double whammy of gender discrimination, as well as deep-seated anti-Semitism. I want to begin by tracing some of the history that helps put their stories into context. Much of this material you will learn about in a few minutes draws from a wonderful book called A Jewish History of Connecticut by Betty N. Hoffman. From the founding of the Connecticut colony in the 1630s, the Congregational Church had a strong hold on many aspects of life and wielded enormous power. The earliest records of Jews in Connecticut indicate that they may have been traveling merchants. During the American Revolution, many Jewish families fled British-occupied New York and Newport, Rhode Island, and settled primarily in Fairfield County temporarily. The first permanent Jewish immigrants to Connecticut probably arrived in the early 19th century. They established a presence in larger cities like New Haven, Hartford, Stamford, and Norwalk. These early immigrants came primarily from Spain, Portugal, North Africa, and the Middle East. They were followed by large waves of German-speaking Jews in the 1830s who quickly outnumbered the earlier arrivals. Throughout all of this time, Jewish residents of Connecticut could not legally establish their own houses of worship. It was not until 1843 that the law has changed. The largest waves of Jewish immigrants arrived between 1880 and 1920 as Jews fled increasing oppression in Russia and other Eastern European countries. They brought with them a wide range of new customs, skills, and cultural elements to the New World. And to give you an idea of the magnitude of immigration during this time, Hartford, for example, saw its Jewish population rise from 1,500 in 1880 to more than 18,000 by 1920. Today, we'll explore the story of one young woman, Sonia Kalish, whose family was among this wave of immigrants and who arrived in the United States when she was just a few months old. You know her by a different name, but we'll get there in a few minutes. Immigration across the board was slowed by the outbreak of World War I, and then again by Congress's passage of the Immigration Restriction Acts of the 1920s that severely limited the numbers and countries of origin of new immigrants to the United States. During this time, Jewish communities began to turn their attention increasingly to strengthen their local enclaves, developing cultural and social institutions, and to expanding outside cities. Anti-Semitism was a major issue in Connecticut as it was elsewhere in the United States. Oops, I went a little fast there. Some Connecticut neighborhoods did not allow Jewish residents. Many companies indulged in discriminatory hiring practices. Colleges enforced strict maximum quotas for Jewish students. As the Nazis rose to power in Europe during the 1930s, the US Congress refused to revise immigration policy to allow for refugees fleeing mounting oppression in Germany and elsewhere. However, some Jewish immigrants did make it to the United States during this time, and we'll meet one of them, Annie Albers, who brought her art with her and broke new ground for women in the arts. After the end of World War II and the discovery of the atrocities committed in Europe, Congress relaxed its immigration stance. And by 1952, Jewish refugees and immigrants had begun arriving in force once again. New post-war opportunities for education, combined with improved infrastructure, offered increased possibility for expansion into the suburbs and for upward mobility for many immigrant families. A final major wave of Jewish immigrants began arriving in the 1960s after new Cold War immigration legislation made it possible for those fleeing to the Soviet Union to immigrate to the United States to escape oppression. This wave lasted until the end of the 20th century. All of this history has led to a diverse and thriving network of Jewish communities in Connecticut, and Jewish women have made major contributions to the development of our state, our nation, and our world. They struggled alongside other groups of American women to secure their right to vote, to expand education and employment opportunities, and to pave the way for future generations to see just how much
inside of some
can accomplish.
Right there. So let's go back again. Click on anything, Control Shift.
I hear something, so okay, that's better. So today we're going to explore, I've been asked to explore Jewish women specifically in the arts. So we're going to really stay within that area of focus. So let's begin. So when Sonia Kalish was born in Ukraine in 1886, her parents had no idea that she would become one of the most recognized voices in American entertainment. Fleeing oppression in Tsarist Russia, the family immigrated to Hartford, arriving when Sonia was just 3 months old. They took the name Abuza and opened a restaurant. Talented from a young age, Sophie began singing for tips in the family restaurant. Though she wanted a career in show business, her family had other, more traditional plans. At age 17, she married Louis Tuck and quickly had a son, Bert. Dissatisfied with her life, Sophie soon divorced Tuck and moved to New York City, leaving her son in her sister Anna's care. Determined to make a better life for herself and procure the means with which to better support her family, Sophie Tucker, as she was now called, began singing in small cafes where she could find work. In 1907, she began performing on the vaudeville stage, but her managers and producers forced her to perform in blackface makeup. They didn't think that an overweight Jewish woman could connect with audiences. She endured and garnered a small following among theatergoers. It wasn't until one night when her makeup was stolen and she was forced to go on stage as herself that her career began to take off. Suddenly, she was catapulted to the forefront of the entertainment scene, becoming a headliner and appearing on stage with many of the top stars of that time, including Will Rogers, Jack Benny, and Fanny Brice. She also began recording songs, beginning in 1911 with Some of These Days, which would become her trademark. So let's take a listen to a slightly later recording from 1927.
Some of these days you'll be so lonely. Some of these days you'll miss me, honey. You'll miss my hugging. You're gonna miss my kissing. You're gonna miss me, honey, when I'm far away. I feel so lonely, for you won't leave, 'cause you know, honey, you've had your way. And when you leave me, you know it's gonna grieve me. Gonna miss your big fat mama, your mama, some of these days. Some of these days, you'll miss me, honey. Some of these days.
Soon, she was touring with her own band and even appearing in early talkie films. Her career spanned more than 5 decades, and she continued performing until very shortly before her death in 1966. But no matter how famous she became, Tucker never forgot her humble roots and devoted much of her later life to philanthropy. Though she is remembered for stage and screen work, as well as the last of the Red Hot Mamas, she is also fondly remembered for her work on multiple causes: women's health, education, theater and the arts, and her beloved Emmanuel Synagogue in Hartford. From musical entertainer Sophie Tucker, we move on to a different facet of the arts, where several of Connecticut's remarkable Jewish women were active. We'll begin with Annie Albers, who fled Nazi oppression in the 1930s to come to the United States, where her groundbreaking career as a textile and graphic artist continued to thrive. Anneliese Fleischmann was born in Berlin in 1899 to affluent parents who encouraged her to pursue her passion for the arts. In 1922, she enrolled at the famous Bauhaus School for the Arts, where she began taking classes in weaving after being denied admittance to the school's glass program because of her gender. During her time at Bauhaus, she developed innovative techniques.
Thank you.
Also, when you empty the dishwasher, please put things away.
I couldn't, I had to come back here and I was hungry. Also, where did you put the parts of my, let me just.
Vivian,
please mute yourself. Thank you. So in 1922, she enrolled at the famous Bauhaus School for the Arts, where she began taking classes in weaving after being denied admittance to the school's glass program because of her gender. During her time at Bauhaus, she developed innovative techniques for creating textile works that were both aesthetically pleasing and functional. In 1925, she married fellow artist Joseph Albers, and in 1928 accepted a teaching position at Bauhaus, where she remained until the school was shuttered by the Nazis in 1933. At that time, the Alberses were fortunate to immigrate to the United States, where they accepted teaching positions at Black Mountain College in North Carolina. Annie Albers specialized in weaving, and during the first decade and a half of her time in the United States, her work was shown across the country and received much critical acclaim. In 1949, she became the first weaver to have a solo exhibition at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. This exhibition and the subsequent traveling exhibit that showcased her work cemented her as the preeminent textile artist of the 20th century. And here's a sample for textiles. She was known for both traditional works, such as this sample, as well as the sample on the right, which is called City. It's a pictorial weaving. Immediately following her exhibition at MoMA, the Alberses moved to New Haven, where Joseph had accepted a position at Yale University. Annie continued to exhibit, weave, lecture, and write. She also designed textiles for Harvard and began to work on the development of mass-producible fabric patterns. Annie was a prolific writer of books and articles. She published On Designing in 1959 and her influential text on weaving in 1965. And then another book in 2001 called Selected Writings on Design. In the 1970s, she devoted her energies exclusively to graphic art. While this may seem like a significant change in medium, her graphic art has many design elements in common with her earlier works, including their use of earth tones, geometric shapes, and repetition. Annie Albers continued to lecture and make prints until her death in 1994 in Orange, Connecticut. She was the last surviving teacher of the Bauhaus. As we've seen, many of the historical factors that influenced Jewish immigration to Connecticut were instrumental in the lives of these remarkable women. The lives of Annie Albers and Sophie Tucker were all influenced by those major waves of immigration. The remaining inductees that will meet today all follow in their footsteps in terms of widening the path for women, but their lives and careers come after those major migration patterns we discussed earlier. Helen Frankenthaler was a younger contemporary of Annie Albers and a prolific and influential artist in her own right. Born in 1928 in New York City, Frankenthaler was the daughter of New York State Supreme Court Justice Alfred Frankenthaler and his wife Martha Lowenstein, who both encouraged her talent from a young age. She was educated in progressive experimental schools. At age 15, she enrolled in the Dalton School, where she studied under the great Mexican muralist Rufino Tamayo, before completing her undergraduate work at Bennington College in Vermont. After graduating in 1949, she returned to New York City, the New York City set, on expanding her influence in the art world. A year later, she organized an exhibition for Bennington alumni artists in New York, and this was her big break. She met Clement Greenberg, William de Kooning, Jackson Pollock, and others. Through these connections, her work was selected for an exhibit featuring unknown artists, and her career took off from there. She had her first solo gallery exhibition in 1951. Though her style differed greatly from the layered look of Jackson Pollock's pieces, she began to explore abstract expressionism under his influence. Frankenthaler pioneered the technique of staining unprimed canvas with oil paints, what she called her soak stain techniques. Her first major work, Mountains and Sea, appeared in 1952. These are just some of the, here it is. Here's the oil on canvas. In the 1960s, she began to experiment with alternative media and embraced printmaking, woodcuts, and lithographs. She continued experimenting with different media, including clay and steel sculpture, and even designed sets and costumes for England's Royal Ballet. And this is called Free Fall. And you can see her attention to color in her paintings, and many credit her with expanding the boundaries of Cubism. But Frankenthaler had a fiercely independent spirit. For example, against advice from markers, she refrained from movement from large to small canvas work, despite the lack of purchases for larger pieces. Throughout her career, she exhibited at nearly every prestigious venue in the world. She also fought against being labeled as a feminine painter and had to deal with tremendous bias against women artists, particularly in European markets. All of the challenges paid off, as prices for her work are among the highest of any female artists. And now we're going to take a look at some of our inductees who were women photographers, very famous in the world. Margaret Bourke-White shattered gender barriers to become one of the most prolific photographers of the first half of the 20th century. Her fearless approach to work brought her to some of the world's most important events and gave her the opportunity to document some of the key figures in those events. During World War II, as well as wars that came after, she traveled overseas and took photographs of the war so that people at home could better understand what was going on. Some of her assignments put her at great personal risk as she captured images of bombs falling and other dangerous moments. One of the unique things we do at the Hall is produce short documentary films about each of our inductees. So let's take a look at Margaret Bork-White's film to get a sense of the scope of her work over her 30-year career. And just as a warning, in this clip, you will see some of the photographs that Margaret took of those killed in Nazi concentration camps. And this could be disturbing to some viewers. Margaret bore witness to many events surrounding World War II and helped bring the war to people's eyes and ears back home. Not only was she the first female photographer for Life magazine, but she was also their first female war correspondent and the first Western photographer to be admitted into the Soviet Union. She also interviewed and photographed Mahatma Gandhi hours before he was assassinated in 1948. So let's take a listen, take a view.
At the end of the war, Margaret traveled through Germany with General Patton and was one of the first photojournalists to document the horrors of the concentration camps as they were liberated, producing some of her most iconic photographs.
She speaks in her autobiography quite openly about the camera kind of providing that protective layer so that she could continue with the work without being so distraught. It's an incredibly powerful series, and it was hugely influential on her life.
In addition to having documented the atrocities afflicted on people of Jewish heritage during the Holocaust, Margaret herself was born to a Jewish father. However, she kept this a secret for most of her life, influenced by her mother's own anti-Semitism. It wasn't until later in life that Margaret overcame this self-judgment and was open about her background. We'll end our time today exploring one of our inductees who has spent her entire career documenting cultural phenomena with her camera. Annie Leibovitz is perhaps the most respected and most prolific photographer of the 20th century, and her immense body of work encompasses some of the most well-known portraits of our time. One of the unique things we do, as I mentioned earlier, we produce short documentaries about each of our inductees. We did the same with Annie. Because Annie's work is so visual in nature, I thought it would be fun for us to hear more about her life and career through the video.
Annie Leibovitz has been chronicling American culture for over 40 years, with her iconic photographs gracing the covers of magazines like Rolling Stone, Vanity Fair, and Vogue, and with the publication of her best-selling books. Ms. Leibovitz is one of the most respected and sought-after photographers in the world, whose body of work is not only comprehensive in its breadth, but stunning in its brilliance. Annie Leibovitz always knew she wanted to be involved in the arts in some way, attending the San Francisco Art Institute in the early 1970s.
I didn't know I would be interested in photography until I went to the Art Institute and took a night class of photography and found it very, compelling. I found it very immediate gratification. You had a camera and you could go out in the world and you could be there, you had a purpose.
While earning her degree, Annie took some of her photographs to Rolling Stone. They were quickly published, and she began working for the magazine.
I think I was so young at the time, and I think Rolling Stone was really glad to have me because I was probably inexpensive, it was also an interesting idea that being a young girl going out and taking pictures, no one took you seriously. No one thought that you were going to do anything particularly special or that it was going to be anything. They weren't worried about, what you were doing. And I was sort of, on some level could be very astute, could come in and go in and do things that would be kind of surprising.
Over the course of 13 years, Ms. Leibovitz's photographs appeared on 140 Rolling Stone magazine covers, including the classic 1980 photo of John Lennon and Yoko Ono. In 1983, Ms. Leibovitz left Rolling Stone magazine.
Annie had just made a transition from Rolling Stone, where she had been or become the most important rock music photographer in the country.
I was beginning to be perceived as a rock and roll photographer, and I didn't particularly think of myself that way. I thought of myself as a photographer. Rolling Stone had moved to New York. Vanity Fair was just starting up, and I felt that it was an interesting time to leave Rolling Stone and broaden my base of the kind of assignment that I had. Like anyone doing a reporting job, you would do your research and you would find out about the person you were going to photograph. As far as Whoopi Goldberg was concerned, she was part of a series of upcoming young comedians, and she was unknown. In her nightclub routine, one of the things she does is she plays a little black girl who thinks that if she scrubs herself, underneath will be white, you know, that if she could scrub off her black skin. So I just had this idea of putting Whoopi in a bathtub, and she could pretend she's scrubbing herself.
Annie Leibovitz's photographs convey her nuanced perspective.
I really felt like I could do a better job if I had a point of view, and that by having a point of view, I could create a stronger picture.
During this incredibly creative time at Vanity Fair, Annie raised the recognition level of the magazine, the people she photographed, and herself with one provocative photograph after another. In 1983, Annie began publishing collections of her work, featuring her portrait work, followed by 8 other books.
She does the whole thing. The books from the beginning to end are done in her studio. She's the arbiter of what goes into the book, how they're presented. Everything about it is Annie.
It's the only place for myself where I can express myself. When you work for a magazine, you're working for somebody, an editor with his own, idea. The only place where my work is really me are the books.
Leibovitz's best-selling book, Women, explores the wide diversity of women and their many roles in our society. It was published in 1999 with Susan Sontag, Annie's partner of 15 years.
It was Susan Sontag's idea. I think that what really sent it on its way, and really, when I really decided that it could be a book, was the series of pictures that I did in Las Vegas of the show Women. And it was really an extraordinary series to me. It's probably one of the strongest set of pictures I've ever done. But to me, it was the beginning of the Women's Book Project. I realized that there really wasn't a collection of what we look like. We sort of don't know what we look like, and we have preconceived ideas about who we are. The best thing that anyone ever told me about it, Karen Finley, who's a performance artist who's in the book, she's the woman shot from the back. She called me after the book came out, and she told me that her daughter, who must have been 9 at the time, looked through the book and said, "Mommy, when I grow up, I want to be a woman." And so I love that. It's my favorite thing anyone ever said about anything I've ever done.
Annie has photographed some of the most iconic people and moments of the past several decades, and her work is a living testament to the power of the image. Even in our selfie culture, there's something about her approach to photography that cuts through the noise and clutter to show us the essential beauty of people. As we've seen, the impact of Jewish women in Connecticut has been vast and varied. They've challenged the status quo and changed the ways we understand our society. And many of them did so with all the odds stacked against them. And one major way we can honor the legacy of those who came before us is by remembering and sharing their stories, reminding one another not to take for granted the possibilities open to us because of their sacrifices. We can also make sure to find our own ways to create social change, and perhaps even more importantly, to help the next generation of women leaders to find and use their voices to create new history. It starts by introducing them to positive role models who show us all what we can become. you'd like to learn more about the women I have shared today, or about any of our 136 inductees, please visit our website at www.cwhf.org. And you can follow us on social media. We're on every social media challenge. So I'm going to close by showing you a video of all of our inductees put to the music Bread and Roses, a traditional song sang at marches for women's rights.
As we go marching, marching in the beauty of the day, a million darkened kitchens, 1,000 mill lofts gray, are touched with all the radiance that a sudden sun discloses. For the people hear us singing, bread and roses, bread and roses. As we go marching, marching, we battle too for men, for they are women's children, and we mother them again. Our life shall not be sweated from birth until life closes. Hearts starve as well as bodies. Give us bread, but give us roses. As we go marching, marching, unnumbered women dead, go crying through our singing, their ancient call for bread, small heart and love and beauty, their trudging spirits new. Yes, it is bread we fight for, but we fight for roses too. As we go marching, marching, we think of braver days. The rising of women meets the rising of the race. No more will the Trojan either tent and toil where one reposes, but the sharing of our stories, bread and roses, bread and roses, bread and roses. Our life shall not be sweated from birth until life closes. Hearts starve as well as bodies, bread and roses, bread and roses.
Thank you all for hosting the hall to share at our remarkable Jewish women of Connecticut. I'm going to stop sharing, and if there are any questions, I'm happy to share, to answer, and thank you.
I have a question for you. First, I didn't even know about the Connecticut Women's Hall of Fame, and this was a great presentation. I really appreciate hearing about these amazing women. And my question to you is, if you weren't limited to selecting women from the arts, which women would you have chosen to highlight today?
So there are a couple of other women that we typically share in this presentation. So Beatrice Fox is one, Beatrice Auerbach Fox, or Fox Auerbach. I'm a little, it's either one or the other. I have to check, sorry. And the other one is Rabbi Judy Cohen. So those are two that are typically in this presentation, but again, I focus on women who are in the arts.
That's great. So is the museum open, or is this a by appointment only?
So we're not an in-person museum, we're a virtual museum. Okay. So we actually come to you and your organizations or schools. So I'm the education manager, so I'm usually the one who leads the programs to adults. Some of our other staff support the presentation programming as well. I do go into schools and I teach this information to our schools, really with the thought of empowering the next generation, using these stories as a backdrop to move forward and not get stuck, and really achieve what they want to achieve in their field, in their dream field. So I go into schools and I teach about this material. Similar to this type of program, we have a number of other different programs that is really based on different subject areas. Like we have a science program on women in science. Then we have a program that is women who really achieve success within the compounds of democracy. They pushed past no, they didn't take no for an answer, so they kept on going. We talk about Marian Anderson, which a lot of people have heard of. She's from Danbury, Connecticut. And we talk about her, what she did, and she didn't take no as an answer. And she, again, was discriminated against because she was a woman and also because of her race. So it's really, we come to you. So if you know of any organizations who would like to host the hall, or any schools, that we're always we always are excited to partner with new schools. And to be honest, in Fairfield County, we're not that well known, which is really so exciting for me to be with all of you today to share our mission with all of you, and hopefully, we'll be able to expand on that to other organizations and schools. And actually, my kids, my son graduated from bicultural as well. So I've done a few little things with them, not a lot, but we've invited them to some of our. We have a number of different girl-centered programs that are grant funded and free to schools as well. So it's not necessarily always a charge. But we're excited to share it with any school, any organization in Connecticut.
Oh,
great, thank you.
Good questions, Jill. Great. So, Liz, that was fabulous, just terrific. And as I was thinking about this program, I said, "Wow, terrific! This will be." But you know what? It's beyond what I thought it was going to be. It was terrific, and I think that it taught us all a lot. And I know that many people here within our organization obviously knew of these women, or some of them pretty well, but we got an extremely well-rounded presentation, Liz, and I thank you very much. So I just have a couple of closing comments to make.
There is one question from Gail in the chat.
Oh, excuse me.
What is the process to choose the women in the Hall of Fame?
So we actually ask the public to nominate people. If you go to our website, there is a tab that you can nominate someone that you feel should be inducted into the Connecticut Women's Hall of Fame, because we don't always come across everybody. We're always told about people that we might not have heard of. So we always like to hear from the community. The person had to either have been born in Connecticut or lived in Connecticut while they were achieving their success, and overcame their barriers, obviously, to move forward as, based on their gender and race and whatever barriers they had in front of them. Basically, all the names are shared with our Board of Trustees, and our Board of Trustees chooses the women who are typically are inducted. Doesn't have to be, we do induct posthumous, so it doesn't have to be living, it could be passed away. And every year we do have a theme that we stay to within, for our induction ceremony. So this year, as you heard, it's women in sports. So we're focused on inducting 3 women in sports who overcame their own barriers to achieve success, because in sports there's such a disparity between women and men still. So we're really excited about that theme for this year's induction ceremony. And you can always reach out to me if you have any more questions. I know I'll give you my email, so you can reach out to me if you have any other questions or want to chat.
I can tell you that there's tons of stuff in the chat.
I
loved it. It was great. And I just reviewed a lot of the stuff in the chat, and it's really terrific. Finally, Larry always keeps me on the straight and narrow. And I neglected prior to this presentation to close the meeting. And I am closing the meeting, and thank you all for attending. And to be continued. We'll have a great time in telling the story. Take care, everyone.